She saved the one man who destroyed her kind, and it might cost her everything. Welcome to a story of survival, power, and impossible choices. If you love tales of outcasts who rise against all odds, alpha kings hiding deadly secrets, and bonds forged in blood and fire, stay until the end. You won't believe how this ends, and don't forget to hit like and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. Now let's begin. The first thing Riven learned about survival was this: never bleed where the wolves can smell you. The second thing was harder to swallow. Sometimes you're the thing they're hunting. She crouched low in the snow, her breath coming out in sharp bursts that hung in the air like accusations. The forest around her was silent. Not peaceful. Silent the way a battlefield goes quiet after the last body drops. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Riven pressed her palm against the frozen ground, feeling the cold bite through the threadbare glove she'd stolen 3 towns back. Her fingers ached. Everything ached. But pain was familiar. Pain was honest. The silver fire inside her wasn't. It flickered beneath her ribs now, restless and wrong, like something caged that wanted out. She clenched her jaw and willed it down. Not here. Not now. The last time she'd lost control, she'd burned through half a supply shed and nearly killed a trader who'd been kind enough to offer her work. They didn't offer her anything after that. Just stones, and words that cut deeper. Cursed. Dangerous. Exile. Riven pulled her cloak tighter and kept moving. The northern wilderness didn't care about her story. It didn't care that she used to have a pack, a family, a place to sleep that wasn't a hollow tree or a cave that stank of rot. Out here, you either kept moving or you became part of the landscape. Frozen. Forgotten. She'd been walking for 6 days straight, surviving on melted snow and the last strip of dried meat she'd bartered for with a half-broken blade. Her boots were falling apart. Her stomach was a knot of hunger she'd learned to ignore. But the fire never got tired. It pulsed now, faint and insistent, like a second heartbeat. Riven stopped. Something was wrong. The trees ahead were too still. No birds. No rustling. The kind of silence that meant predators were close. She dropped into a crouch, hand going to the knife at her hip. It wasn't much, dull edge, chipped handle, but it was all she had. Then she smelled it. Blood. Fresh. Heavy. And something else underneath it. Something bitter and sharp, like poison. Her instinct screamed at her to turn around, to run. But Riven had learned long ago that instincts were luxuries for people who had choices. She didn't. She moved forward, slow and careful, every step deliberate. The smell grew stronger. The fire inside her responded, flaring hot against her ribs. She hissed through her teeth and shoved it down again. The snow beneath her boots was trampled, stained dark in patches. Something had fought here. Something big. Then she saw it. A wolf. Massive. Black as midnight, its fur matted with blood, and something darker, thick, oily, wrong. It lay on its side in the snow, breathing shallow and labored. One of its hind legs was twisted at an angle that made Riven's stomach turn. Its eyes were half open, glazed with pain. It was dying. Riven should have walked away. Should have left it there. Wolves didn't survive out here alone, and neither did exiles who wasted energy on lost causes. The smart thing, the survival thing, was to keep moving. Maybe take what supplies it had, if it had been traveling with a pack. But then the wolf's eyes focused on her. For a moment, neither of them moved. Riven saw something in that gaze, something that wasn't animal, something almost human, aware, pleading, the kind of look that said, "I know what's happening to me, and I can't stop it." Her fire flared again, harder this time, and she felt it before she understood it. The pull, the recognition. This wasn't just a wolf, this was a shifter, and he was dying from silver blood poison, the kind meant to make sure you didn't come back. "Damn it," Riven whispered. She knew that poison, had seen it used once, years ago, when her pack had caught a rogue shifter trying to steal from their winter stores. They dosed him with silver blood and left him in the woods. He'd screamed for 3 days before he finally stopped. This wolf wasn't screaming, but he would be, soon. Riven knelt beside him, ignoring the way her hands shook, ignoring the voice in her head that sounded too much like her old pack leader. "You help him, you're dead. He's not one of us. He's not worth it. But Riven had stopped listening to voices like that a long time ago. She placed her hands on the wolf's chest, feeling the faint, erratic thump of his heartbeat. The poison had spread deep. She could feel it, thick and corrosive, eating away at him from the inside. Normal healing wouldn't touch this. Nothing would. Except her. Riven closed her eyes and let the fire come. It surged up through her chest, down her arms, and into her palms. Silver flames erupted from her hands, wrapping around the wolf's body like liquid light. The heat was intense, but not burning. It was something else, something older, something that felt like it had been sleeping inside her since birth, waiting for a reason to wake up. The wolf convulsed beneath her hands. Riven held on, gritting her teeth as the fire dug deeper, searching out every trace of poison and burning it clean. She felt his pain like it was her own, sharp, overwhelming, unbearable. Felt the poison fighting back, trying to burrow deeper, trying to hide. But the fire was relentless. It chased the poison through his veins, through his muscles, through his bones. Burning, cleansing, healing. The flames grew brighter, hotter. The snow around them melted, hissing into steam. Riven's vision blurred. Her body screamed at her to stop, that she was giving too much, that she'd burn herself out. She didn't stop. And then, with a final pulse of light that left spots dancing across her vision, the fire went out. Riven collapsed backward into the snow, gasping for breath. Her vision swam. Her body felt like it had been wrung out and left to dry. Every muscle trembled. Her hands were numb. But she'd done it. The poison was gone. The wolf's breathing steadied, deepened. His heartbeat grew stronger, more regular. Riven managed a weak, bitter laugh. "You're welcome," she muttered to the unconscious animal. She should move, should get away before he woke up and decided she was a threat. Shifters were unpredictable when they were hurt, and she'd just dumped a massive amount of power into a complete stranger. But her body wouldn't cooperate. She was too tired, too drained. Just a minute, she told herself. Just 1 minute to catch her breath, and then she'd go. Then the wolf moved. Not like an animal waking up, like a man deciding to stand. The shift was sudden and brutal. Bones cracking, muscles stretching, fur melting away into skin. Riven scrambled back, knife somehow finding its way into her hand despite her exhaustion, as the massive black wolf became something else entirely. A man, tall, broad-shouldered, built like he'd been carved from the same stone as the mountains around them. Scarred, not just battle scars, but the kind that came from surviving things that should have killed you. His hair was black as his fur had been, hanging loose around a face that looked like it had forgotten how to smile years ago. Sharp cheekbones, strong jaw, and eyes, gray, cold, and sharp as winter ice, that locked onto hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. He was naked, covered in blood and the residue of poison, but he didn't seem to notice or care. He pushed himself upright slowly, testing his limbs like a man who'd just been brought back from the edge of death, and wasn't quite sure it had worked. Riven's breath caught in her throat. She knew that face. Everyone did. Kale Draven, the Alpha King, the man who ruled the Northern Territories with an iron fist and a reputation for ruthlessness that made even other alphas nervous. The man who'd unified the fractured wolf packs through a combination of brutal efficiency and strategic marriages. The man who'd signed the decree 15 years ago that exiled wolves like her. Wolves born with uncontrollable power, wolves deemed too dangerous to live among the packs. The man who'd destroyed her life without even knowing her name. And she'd just saved him. Kale's gaze swept over her, calculating, cold, assessing. Taking in her threadbare clothes, her too thin frame, the silver fire still flickering faintly around her fingertips. "You," he said. His voice was low, rough, like gravel underfoot. "You healed me." Riven didn't answer. She couldn't. Her mind was racing too fast, her heart pounding too loud. She'd just saved the Alpha King, the same man who'd made it legal to hunt people like her, the same man whose decree had gotten her thrown out of her pack, left to starve, or freeze, or be killed by rogues. She'd saved him. What the hell had she been thinking? Kale's eyes narrowed as he studied her more closely. His gaze lingered on her hands, where the silver fire was still dying out in faint sparks. "Silver fire," he said slowly, recognition dawning in his expression. You're one of the marked. It wasn't a question. It was a condemnation. The marked. That's what they called people like her. People born with power that didn't follow the normal shifter rules. Power that was wild, unpredictable, dangerous. Power that scared the hell out of everyone who saw it. Riven's grip tightened on her knife. The blade was shaking. She couldn't tell if it was from exhaustion or rage. "And you're the bastard who made sure we couldn't live anywhere," she shot back. Something flickered in Cale's expression, too fast to read. Surprise, maybe. Or amusement. "If I wanted you dead, you'd be dead." "Funny," Riven said, forcing herself to her feet even though her legs felt like water. "I was thinking the same thing. I could have left you to rot. Should have, probably. But you didn't." "Don't remind me." For a moment they stared at each other. The tension stretched tight as a bowstring. Riven was acutely aware of how vulnerable she was right now, drained, exhausted, barely able to stand. If Cale decided she was a threat, she wouldn't last 10 seconds. Then Cale did something unexpected. He smiled. It wasn't warm. It wasn't kind. But it was real. The kind of smile that said he'd just found something interesting. "You've got fire," he said. "I'll give you that." Riven didn't lower the knife. "What were you doing out here? Alpha Kings don't just wander into the wilderness alone and end up poisoned." The smile faded. Cale's expression went hard again, all trace of amusement vanishing like it had never been there. "I was betrayed." The word landed heavy between them. "My own counsel," he continued, his voice flat and cold, "poisoned me during a hunt, left me for dead in the woods. They used silver blood to make sure I wouldn't heal, wanted to make sure I didn't come back." Riven processed that. An Alpha King, betrayed by his own people, by the very council he'd trusted to help him rule. It should have felt like justice, should have felt good, watching the man who destroyed her life get a taste of his own medicine. It didn't. Maybe because she knew what betrayal felt like, knew what it was like to have the people who were supposed to protect you turn their backs instead. "Why tell me?" she asked, her voice sharper than she intended. Cale's gray eyes bored into hers. "Because you're going to help me." Riven laughed, sharp and bitter. The sound echoed through the trees. "Like hell I am. I don't owe you anything." "You want answers, Cale said, taking a step closer. Riven forced herself not to back up. "About your power. About why you were born marked. About why the fire doesn't kill you when it should." Riven went still. Her heart was hammering now for a different reason. Cale saw it. Saw the hunger in her eyes, the desperate need to understand. "I know things," he said. "Things about the marked bloodlines. Things about where the power comes from. Things your pack never told you." "My pack threw me out," Riven said coldly. "They didn't tell me anything except that I was dangerous and they wanted me gone." "Because they were afraid," Cale replied. "And fear makes people stupid, makes them cruel. But I'm not afraid of you." "You should be." "Maybe." Cale tilted his head, studying her like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve. "Or maybe you should be afraid of what happens if you don't help me." Riven's jaw tightened. "Is that a threat?" "It's a deal." Cale's voice dropped, becoming almost conversational. "Help me expose the traitors. Help me take back what's mine. And I'll tell you everything you want to know. About your bloodline. About your power. About why you're not a curse, you're a weapon. A very valuable one." Riven's heart pounded. Every instinct she had screamed at her to say no, to walk away, to have nothing to do with this man who'd signed her exile without a second thought, who'd made it legal to hunt people like her, who represented everything she'd learned to hate about the pack system. But she also wanted answers, had wanted them for years, had spent countless nights wondering why she was different, why she'd been born with power that didn't make sense, why her fire could heal instead of just destroy, why she survived things that should have killed her, and she was tired, so tired of surviving on scraps, of running, of being alone. "Fine," she said finally, hating herself for it. "But if you cross me, if you try to use me and throw me away like everyone else has, I'll burn you alive. I don't care if you're the Alpha King or not." Cale's smile returned, cold and sharp. I'd expect nothing less. He held out his hand. Riven stared at it for a long moment. This was a mistake. She knew it was a mistake. Nothing good could come from making deals with men like Cale Draven. But she was out of options. She took his hand. His grip was strong, calloused, warm despite the cold. "Deal," she said. "Deal," Cale echoed. And in that moment, Riven knew she'd just made either the best decision of her life or the worst. Probably the worst. They walked in silence for the first hour. Cale had pulled on the cloak Riven had scavenged from an abandoned hunter's cabin 2 days back. It barely fit across his shoulders, and it was threadbare in places, but it was better than nothing. His injuries were healing fast, faster than they should have, even for a shifter. Riven noticed the way his limp faded after the first mile, the way the color returned to his face. The fire inside her was quiet now, spent. It always left her like this after a big healing, hollow and fragile, like a glass bottle with cracks running through it. She stumbled twice in the first 10 minutes, barely catching herself. The second time, Cale caught her arm before she hit the ground. "You're weak," he said. Not an insult, just an observation. "Thanks for noticing," Riven muttered, pulling free from his grip. "I'm serious." His tone wasn't mocking. If anything, it sounded almost concerned. "You burned through too much power. Your body's trying to eat itself to compensate. You need food, rest, water." "I need a lot of things," Riven shot back. "Doesn't mean I'm getting them." Cale studied her for a long moment, his gray eyes unreadable. Then he nodded toward the west, where the sun was starting to sink toward the horizon. "There's a safe house half a day from here. We'll stop there." "We?" Riven raised an eyebrow. "I don't remember agreeing to travel with you. I said I'd help. Didn't say I'd be your traveling companion." "You didn't," Cale said simply. "But if you collapse out here, you're dead, and I need you alive. So we travel together until you're strong enough not to be a liability." Riven hated that he was right, hated that she was too weak to argue, hated that she needed help from the last person on earth she wanted to owe anything to. "Fine," she bit out. "Lead the way, Your Majesty." If Cale caught the sarcasm, he didn't show it. He just started walking. Riven followed, because what else was she going to do? The landscape around them was brutal. Snow-covered pines stretched in every direction, their branches heavy with ice. The ground was uneven, treacherous, full of hidden roots and frozen streams. The temperature was dropping fast as the sun sank lower, and Riven's threadbare cloak wasn't doing much to keep the cold out. "Why did they do it?" she asked after a while, partly to distract herself from the cold, partly because she actually wanted to know. "Your counsel. Why betray you now?" Cale didn't look back at her. "Power. What else is there? That's not an answer. It's the only one that matters." He ducked under a low-hanging branch. "They wanted control. I wouldn't give it to them, so they decided to take it." Riven frowned. "You're the Alpha King. How much more control could they want?" "All of it." Cale's voice was flat. "I unified the territories, brought peace, made it so packs could trade with each other instead of tearing each other apart. But peace doesn't make everyone happy. Some people profit from chaos. And your council was profiting. Some of them." Cale paused, glancing back at her. "The northern territories are rich in resources. Timber, minerals, good hunting grounds. But those resources have to be distributed. I made rules, fair trade, equal access. Some of the older families didn't like that, didn't like having to share what they saw as theirs by right." Riven caught up to him. "So they decided to kill you and put someone more flexible in charge." "Something like that? And you didn't see it coming?" Cale's jaw tightened. "I trusted the wrong people." There was something raw in his voice, something almost vulnerable. It didn't fit with the image Riven had built up of the ruthless Alpha King, didn't fit with the stories she'd heard. She looked away. "So what's the plan? We just walk back into the capital and announce you're alive? Because I'm pretty sure whoever tried to kill you will just try again." "We don't announce anything," Cale said. "We go back quietly, find proof of who was involved, build a case, and then we expose them publicly where they can't hide." "And then?" and then I tear them apart. The words were cold, final, delivered without emotion or hesitation. Riven believed him. "What about me?" she asked. "What happens when this is over? When you've got your throne back and you don't need me anymore?" Kale stopped walking, turned to face her fully. "That depends on you. Not good enough. It's all I've got." Kale took a step closer. "You want guarantees? There aren't any. You want safety? You won't find it with me. But you want answers, real ones. I can give you those. I can tell you why you were born with silver fire. I can tell you about the bloodlines, about the first marked, about what your power really is." Riven held his stare. "And if I say no? If I walk away right now?" "Then you walk away," Kale said, "and you spend the rest of your life wondering who you really are, wondering why you're different, wondering if you really are just a curse or if you're something more." Riven's fire stirred beneath her ribs, restless and warm, responding to something in his words. She hated him for being right, hated that he'd found the one thing she couldn't walk away from. "Fine," she said, "but I'm not your soldier. I'm not your weapon to point and fire. We're partners, equals. You don't give me orders." Kale's mouth curved into something that might have been respect. "Deal. And if I find out you're lying to me about any of this, the deal's off and you're on your own. Fair enough?" They stared at each other for another moment. Then Kale held out his hand again. Riven took it. His grip was firm, steady. "Partners?" she said. "Partners?" Kale agreed. They shook on it, her hand small and scarred in his, calloused and strong. And Riven tried very hard not to think about what she'd just committed herself to. They reached the safe house just after full dark. It was little more than a shack buried in the trees, half collapsed and hidden beneath years of snow and bramble. Riven wouldn't have seen it if Kale hadn't led her straight to it. "Charming," she muttered as Kale cleared away the branches blocking the door. "It's dry," he said. "And it's got supplies. That's all that matters." Inside was better than outside, at least. There was a fireplace, a stack of wood that was mostly dry, and a corner that held a small cache of supplies: salted meat, dried fruit, a few water skins, and a flask of something that looked homemade and probably tasted awful. Riven's stomach growled loudly. Kale glanced at her. "When's the last time you ate?" "Yesterday," Riven lied. It had been 2 days, but she wasn't about to admit that. Kale's expression said he knew she was lying, but he didn't call her on it. He just tossed her a strip of dried meat in the flask. Eat, drink, rest. The meat was tough and oversalted, but it was the best thing Riven had tasted in weeks. She ate slowly, forcing herself not to devour it all at once. The flask burned going down. Definitely homemade, definitely awful, but it left her feeling steadier. Kale built a fire while she ate. He moved with practiced efficiency, like he'd done this 1,000 times. Within minutes, flames were crackling in the hearth, filling the small space with warmth and light. Riven watched him work. He'd found another cloak in the supply cache. This one actually fit him, and cleaned most of the blood off his skin. In the firelight, he looked less like a dying wolf and more like what he was: a king. Powerful. Dangerous. In control. "Why do you have safe houses?" she asked. "I thought alpha kings lived in palaces." "They do." Kale sat back, eyes fixed on the flames. "But sometimes you need to disappear. Sometimes you need a place to run to when everything goes wrong." "You plan for betrayal?" "I plan for everything." Riven took another drink from the flask. The burn was becoming familiar. "Didn't plan well enough this time." Kale's jaw tightened. "No, I didn't." There was silence for a moment, broken only by the crackling fire. "Tell me about the marked," Riven said finally. "You promised answers. I'm listening." Kale looked at her. "What do you know?" "Not much." Riven stared into the fire. "My pack said the marked were cursed, born wrong, that our power was unstable, dangerous, that we couldn't control it. They said we were mistakes. They were wrong." Riven's head snapped up. "What?" "The marked aren't cursed," Kale said. "And you're not mistakes. You're descendants of the first shifters, the original bloodline." Riven stared at him. That's not... The stories say the first shifters were normal, that they could just shift between wolf and human. Nothing about fire or... The stories are incomplete, Kale interrupted. The first shifters had power beyond just changing shape. They could heal, they could sense corruption. Some could manipulate elements, fire, water, earth. They were stronger, faster, more connected to the old magic. If that's true, what happened to them? They were hunted. Kale's voice was flat. By humans who feared them, by other shifters who wanted their power. Most of them died. The ones who survived went into hiding. Their bloodlines were diluted over generations. Most shifters now only carry a fraction of the original power, just enough to shift, nothing more. But the marked are throwbacks, Kale finished. Random genetic expressions of the original bloodline. You're born with power that most shifters lost centuries ago. Riven's mind was reeling. If that's true, why does everyone think we're cursed? Because power that's strong is threatening, Kale said. Because people fear what they don't understand. And because some of the marked did go rogue, lost control of their power, hurt people. So you made it legal to exile us. Kale met her gaze. I made it legal to separate unstable shifters from the general population until they could be trained. I didn't say kill them. I didn't say abandon them. That's what happened anyway. I know. Kale's voice was quiet. The law was supposed to protect both sides, protect the marked from being killed outright, and protect normal shifters from unstable power. But like most laws, it got twisted. Used as an excuse to get rid of anyone different. Riven's fire stirred beneath her ribs, and you didn't stop it. I couldn't be everywhere at once, Kale said. The territories are vast, dozens of packs, each with their own leaders, their own interpretations of the law. I tried to enforce the original intent, but... He trailed off. But you failed. Yes. The admission hung in the air between them. Riven took another drink from the flask. So what's my power then? The silver fire. What is it? Purification, Kale said. One of the rarest abilities among the first shifters. The fire doesn't just heal, it cleanses, burns away corruption, poison, disease, anything that doesn't belong. That's why I could cure the silver blood poison. Yes, and that's why you're valuable. Silver blood corruption is spreading. Someone's using it as a weapon, a way to control people. Your power is one of the few things that can counter it. Riven's stomach turned. So you don't want a partner, you want a tool. I want both, Kale said bluntly. I won't lie to you. Your power is useful, I need it, but I also meant what I said about being equals. You're not my servant, you're not expendable. How do I know you mean that? You don't. Kale leaned forward. But I kept my word about the answers, didn't I? And I'll keep my word about the rest. Work with me. Help me expose the corruption. And when it's done, you can choose. Stay and learn to control your power properly, or leave and never see me again. Riven wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that this partnership could be real, that she wasn't just being used again, but trust didn't come easy to people who'd been thrown away. I'll think about it, she said finally. Kale nodded. Fair enough. They sat in silence for a while, both staring into the fire. Riven felt exhaustion creeping up on her, heavy and insistent. The warmth, the food, the relative safety, it was all conspiring to drag her down into sleep. Rest, Kale said, as if reading her mind. I'll keep watch. Why? Because you're dead on your feet, and if something attacks, you'll be useless. Riven wanted to argue, wanted to stay awake, stay alert, stay in control, but her body had other ideas. She curled up near the fire, using her pack as a pillow, and let her eyes close. The last thing she heard before sleep took her was Kale's voice, quiet and thoughtful. You did good today, saving me. Most people wouldn't have. Riven didn't answer. Wasn't sure if he expected her to, but as she drifted off, she felt something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. Not the fire, something else, something that might have been hope. But they left at dawn. Riven woke to find Kale already up, already packed, the fire reduced to ash. He'd left her sleep through the night without waking her for a watch shift. She should have been angry about that. Didn't like being treated like she needed coddling, but she'd needed the sleep. Felt almost human again. "We've got a long walk ahead, Kale said when she sat up. 3 days to the capital if we push hard. Maybe 4 if we run into trouble." "We'll run into trouble," Riven said. It wasn't pessimism, just experience. "Probably." They ate a cold breakfast of dried fruit and hard bread, then set out into the frozen wilderness. The journey back toward the capital was brutal. The northern territories didn't forgive weakness, and winter was at its peak. Snowstorms rolled in without warning, turning the world white and howling. The cold bit through every layer of clothing, turning fingers and toes numb within minutes of exposure. And every step felt like a gamble. One wrong move, one missed shelter, and they'd freeze before morning. But Riven had survived worse, and Kale moved through the wilderness like he owned it. He knew every game trail, every shortcut, every place where the ice was thin. He navigated by instinct and memory, never hesitating, never second-guessing. Riven found herself grudgingly impressed. On the second day, they talked more. Kale asked about her exile, and Riven found herself telling him things she hadn't spoken about in years. About the night her fire had first manifested, burning hot and bright and completely out of control. About the fear in her pack leader's eyes. About the vote that had banished her, 15-1. "Who was the one?" Kale asked. "My brother," Riven said quietly. "He was the only one who argued for keeping me, said I could learn control." "What happened to him?" "Don't know. Haven't seen him since." Pussy Kale was quiet for a moment. Then, "I'm sorry." Riven glanced at him, surprised. "For what?" "For the law. For what it enabled. I meant well, but intent doesn't matter much when people suffer anyway." It wasn't an excuse, wasn't a justification, just an acknowledgement. Riven didn't know what to say to that. They walked in silence for a while longer. On the third day, they were ambushed. Riven saw the first assassin a heartbeat before the arrow left the bow. She shoved Kale aside without thinking, and the arrow buried itself in a tree trunk where his head had been. "Move!" she shouted. 3 more figures emerged from the trees, cloaked, masked, moving with deadly precision. Professional killers, not random bandits. Kale shifted mid-stride, bones cracking as he became the massive black wolf again. He hit the first assassin like an avalanche, jaws closing around the man's throat before he could scream. Blood sprayed across white snow. Riven pulled her knife and met the second one head-on. He was bigger than her, stronger, better armed. He had a short sword to her chipped blade, but she was faster. She ducked under his first swing, slashed across his ribs, and twisted away before he could recover. He grunted, more annoyed than hurt, and came at her again. Riven danced back, using the trees for cover. He was good, trained, disciplined, patient, but he was also predictable. She let him chase her, let him think he was backing her into a corner, and when he committed to a thrust that would have skewered her, she wasn't there. She'd dropped low, rolled under his guard, and came up inside his reach. Her knife found the gap between his ribs. Once, twice, 3 times. He went down hard. Riven spun, looking for the third assassin, and found him already dead. Kale standing over the body in human form again, breathing hard. "You okay?" he asked. "Fine." Riven's hands were shaking. Adrenaline. "You?" "I'll live." They both looked at the bodies. Professional gear, good weapons, and when Riven rolled one over, she saw the brand on his wrist, a coiled serpent. "Council assassins, Kale said grimly. "They know I'm alive." Riven's fire stirred, responding to something she didn't quite understand yet. She knelt beside the nearest body, placing her hand on his chest. The fire surged up automatically, and she gasped. She could see it, feel it, the corruption spreading through his veins like black oil. The same poison that had nearly killed Kale, but different. Weaponized. Controlled. "They're corrupted," she said. "All of them. Someone's using silver blood to control them." Kale stared at the bodies, his expression dark. "That requires resources. Knowledge. Someone with access to old texts, old methods. Someone on your council. Someone close to the throne," Kale agreed. He looked at Riven. "Can you track it, the corruption? Can you sense where it's coming from?" Riven closed her eyes, reaching out with her fire. It was hard. She was still learning this, still figuring out how it worked, but she could feel something, a direction, a pull. East, she said, toward the capital. It's faint, but it's there. Kale's eyes gleamed with something dangerous. Then we keep moving, and we find out who's behind this before they send more. They left the bodies where they fell. The wolves would take care of them. As they walked, Riven found herself thinking about what Kale had said, about the Markid, about her power being purification, not destruction. For the first time in her life, the fire inside her didn't feel like a curse. It felt like purpose. And that was almost more terrifying than the assassins. The capital rose from the frozen landscape like a scar on the earth, all gray stone and black iron, walls thick enough to withstand sieges, towers that scraped the sky. Riven had never seen it up close before. From a distance, it had always looked imposing. Now, standing at the edge of the tree line with Kale beside her, it just looked hungry. "That's home?" she asked. "That's the cage," Kale said flatly. "Home is something else." They'd spent the last day circling the outer territories, avoiding patrols and staying off the main roads. Kale's presence needed to stay hidden until they had proof of the betrayal. One wrong move, one person recognizing him too early, and whoever had poisoned him would finish the job. Riven's fire had been restless the whole approach. She could feel the corruption now, thick and heavy in the air, like oil on water. It clung to the city, seeped into the stones, wrapped around certain buildings like vines. "It's everywhere," she murmured. Kyle glanced at her. "The corruption?" "Yeah, concentrated in the palace, but spreading outward. How long has this been going on?" "Months, maybe. I didn't see it until it was too late." His jaw tightened. "I should have seen it." "You're not infallible." "No, but I'm supposed to be better than this." They moved closer under cover of twilight, slipping through the outer district where the workers and traders lived. The streets were narrow here, cramped, the buildings leaning against each other like tired old men. People moved through the snow with their heads down, not making eye contact, not talking. Fear. Riven could smell it. "They know something's wrong," she said quietly. Kale nodded. "The corruption spreads through control, fear, obedience. People feel it even if they don't understand it." They ducked into an alley as a patrol passed, 6 guards in council colors, moving in formation. Too disciplined, too focused. Riven's fire flared as they walked by, and she caught the telltale shimmer of corruption in their veins. "Those guards," she whispered once they'd passed. "They're compromised." "How many?" "All of them," Kale swore under his breath. "If the patrols are corrupted, the council's already consolidated power. We need to move fast." They made their way to a safe house in the merchant district, a nondescript building squeezed between a tanner's shop and a forge. Kale knocked 3 times, paused, knocked twice more. The door opened a crack. A woman's face appeared, sharp features, suspicious eyes, a scar running down her left cheek. "Dead men don't knock," she said. "Dead men don't pay their debts either," Kale replied. "But I'm here to collect, Mira." The woman's eyes widened. She yanked the door open. "Get inside, now." They slipped through and Mira bolted the door behind them, throwing 3 separate locks. The interior was dim, lit by a single oil lamp, but warm. Riven caught the smell of bread baking somewhere in the back. "You're supposed to be dead," Mira said, rounding on Kale. "The council announced it 4 days ago, official mourning period and everything." "I'm sure they're devastated," Kale said dryly. Mira's gaze shifted to Riven, assessing. "Who's she?" "Someone who saved my life," Kale said. "Riven, this is Mira Thane. She runs information networks throughout the territories." "I run a bakery," Mira corrected. "The information is a side business." "Right." Kale moved further into the room. "What's the situation?" Mira's expression darkened. "Bad. The council declared you dead within hours of the hunt. No investigation, no search party, just a quick announcement and a vote to establish a temporary ruling council until a new alpha could be chosen." "Who's on the temporary council?" "Saris Vale chairs it." The name hit the room like a stone. Riven saw Kale's entire body go rigid. "Ceres," he said quietly. Too quietly. "Your ex-queen decided she wanted her crown back," Mira said. "And she brought half the old families with her. They've been systematically replacing loyalists with their own people. Anyone who questions it disappears." "How many disappearances?" 17 that I know of, probably more." Kale paced to the window, staring out at the darkening streets. "She planned this, all of it." "Who's Ceres Vale?" Riven asked. Mira answered before Kale could. "His former mate. She ruled beside him for 3 years before he annulled the bond and exiled her." Riven looked at Kale. "You didn't mention an ex-wife." "Didn't seem relevant," Kale said without turning around. "She's leading a coup against you and you didn't think it was relevant?" "I thought she was gone. Thought she'd moved on." Kale's hands clenched. "I was wrong." Mira pulled out a bottle of whiskey and 3 glasses. "You need to hear the rest. Ceres isn't just consolidating political power. There's been an outbreak, a sickness spreading through the lower districts. Started about 2 weeks ago." Riven felt ice slide down her spine. "What kind of sickness?" "Fever, weakness, black veins spreading under the skin. Sound familiar?" "Silver blood corruption," Riven said. Mira nodded grimly. "They're calling it the Hollow Plague. No cure, no treatment, people just waste away. The council's response has been to quarantine entire blocks, lock people in their homes, and wait for them to die." "How many dead?" Kale's voice was still too quiet. "Over 100, and rising." Riven's fire surged beneath her ribs, hot and angry. "I can cure it. The corruption. My power can burn it out." Both Kale and Mira looked at her. "You're marked," Mira said slowly. "Silver fire?" "Yes." Mira's expression shifted. Not fear exactly, but wariness. "The council's been spreading stories about the marked, saying they caused the plague, that their unstable power is infecting normal people." "That's a lie," Kale said sharply. "I know that, Mira replied, "but the people don't. They're scared, and scared people believe what they're told." Riven felt something cold settle in her chest. Of course Ceres would blame the marked. Perfect scapegoat. Perfect excuse to tighten control. "We need to get into the palace," Kale said. "Find evidence of Ceres' involvement. Expose her before she can solidify her position." "The palace is locked down," Mira said. "Only council members and their personal guards allowed in. And like you said, the guards are compromised." "Then we go in quietly." Kale turned to face them. "Mira, I need maps of the palace. Updated patrol schedules. Anything that'll help us move unseen." "I can get you maps. Schedules are harder. They've been changing them randomly to prevent exactly this kind of infiltration." "Do what you can." Kale looked at Riven. "We'll need your fire to sense corruption, map out who's compromised and who's not. Find allies if there are any left." "And if there aren't?" Riven asked. "Then we improvise." Mira disappeared into the back room and returned with rolled parchments, detailed maps of the palace layout, marked with notations in tight handwriting. She spread them across a table, pointing out entry points, guard stations, vulnerable areas. "Your best bet is the Eastern Service entrance," she said. "It's used for supply deliveries, less heavily guarded than the main gates." Kale studied the maps. "What about the council chambers?" "Here." Mira tapped a section in the palace's heart. "Central tower, 3 levels down. That's where Ceres has been holding court." "And my quarters?" "Sealed. She declared them off limits, said they were being preserved in your honor." Mira's tone made it clear what she thought of that. Riven leaned over the maps, tracing paths with her eyes. "If we get caught—" "We won't," Kale said. "But if we do?" Kale met her gaze. "Then I protect you. That's the deal." "I don't need protection." "Maybe not, but you've got it anyway." Something in his tone made Riven's chest tighten. She looked away, focusing on the maps. "When do we go?" "Tonight," Kale said. "Before Ceres realizes I'm alive, before she has time to prepare." Mira poured whiskey into all 3 glasses and pushed them forward, to bad ideas and worse odds. They drank. The whiskey burned, but it steadied Riven's nerves. She caught Kale watching her and raised an eyebrow. What? You're scared, he said. Not a criticism, just an observation. Terrified, Riven admitted. But I've been scared before. Hasn't killed me yet. It won't this time either, Kale said. Riven wished she believed him. They left Mira's safe house after dark, moving through streets that had gone quiet and hostile. Curfew was in effect. Another new council rule, Mira had said. Anyone caught outside after sunset was detained for questioning. Riven kept her hood up, her fire dampened down as far as it would go. Beside her, Kale moved like a shadow, utterly silent despite his size. They avoided the main thoroughfares, sticking to alleys and back routes that Kale seemed to know by instinct. Once, they had to press flat against a wall as another patrol passed, and Riven felt the corruption rolling off the guards like heat from a forge. They're getting worse, she whispered once it was safe. The corruption's spreading faster. Ceres is accelerating her timeline, Kale replied. She knows she needs to consolidate power before resistance can organize. They reached the palace walls just before midnight. The eastern service entrance was exactly where Mira had marked it, a heavy wooden door set into the stone, meant for supply carts and servants. It was guarded by two men in council colors. Kale assessed them from the shadows. Corrupted? Riven reached out with her fire, just a tendril of power. Both guards lit up in her senses like torches. Completely. Can you handle them quietly? I can try. Riven moved before she could second-guess herself. She slipped from the shadows, stumbling deliberately, plain drunk. The guards turned toward her immediately. Hey, one of them called. Curfew! Get back to... Riven lunged forward, pressing her palms against their chests. Silver fire erupted, not burning but purifying, tearing through the corruption in their blood. Both guards convulsed. One managed a choked gasp before his eyes rolled back. They collapsed, unconscious, but breathing. Kale emerged from the shadows. Clean work. They'll wake up confused, Riven said, breathing hard. The effort had cost her more than she'd expected. Maybe with headaches, but the corruption's gone. Good enough. Kale dragged both bodies into the shadows, propping them against the wall where they wouldn't be immediately visible. Then he tried the door, locked. He pulled a thin piece of metal from his belt and worked at the mechanism. Within seconds, the lock clicked open. Useful skill for a king, Riven murmured. Useful skill for anyone, Kale replied. Kings just don't usually advertise it. Inside, the palace was cold and dark. Service corridors stretched in both directions, lit by widely spaced torches that threw more shadow than light. The walls were bare stone, built for function rather than beauty. Riven's fire pulsed. Left, she said. The corruption's thicker that way. They moved deeper into the palace, following the pull of corruption like a thread through a maze. Twice they had to hide as servants passed. Normal people, not corrupted, just trying to do their jobs in a place that had become hostile and strange. The third time, they weren't fast enough. A woman in servant's livery rounded a corner and nearly collided with them. She opened her mouth to scream. Kale caught her, one hand over her mouth, the other steadying her. Don't, he said quietly. Please. I'm not here to hurt you. The woman's eyes were wild with fear. Then she looked at him, really looked, and something like recognition flickered. My lord? She whispered when Kale lowered his hand. Asha, Kale said, and there was relief in his voice. You're still here. They said you were dead. Asha's voice shook. They said the hunt went wrong, that you were killed by rogues. They lied. Kale glanced down the corridor. Where's your family? Are they safe? Safe as anyone. Asha's hands twisted in her apron. My lord, you shouldn't be here. If they catch you, I know, but I need information. The council chambers. Is Ceres there now? Asha nodded. She holds court every night, makes people come to her, makes them beg for supplies, for medicine. Her voice broke. My lord, there's a plague. It's killing people, and she's doing nothing. I know, Kale said gently, and I'm going to stop it. But I need to know. Who's still loyal? Who can I trust? Very few, Asha said. Most of your supporters have been arrested or worse. Captain Thorne is still free, I think. He's been organizing quiet resistance in the outer districts. And there's Lady Kira. She speaks against Ceres in council meetings, though it costs her. Anyone else? Not that I know of. I'm sorry, my lord. Kale squeezed her shoulder. You've helped more than you know. Get somewhere safe. Don't tell anyone you saw me. Asha nodded and hurried away, disappearing into the warren of corridors. Riven waited until she was gone. She called you my lord. People here care about you. Some do, Kale said. Others just fear the alternative. Is that what you think? That loyalty's just fear in disguise? Sometimes. Kale started walking again. Come on, we're close. The corruption grew heavier the deeper they went. Riven could feel it pressing against her senses, oily and wrong, making her skin crawl. Her fire pushed back instinctively, creating a small bubble of clean air around them. They reached a junction where 4 corridors met. Kale paused, getting his bearings. That's when they heard voices. Don't care what excuses you have, the quotas must be met. A woman's voice, cold, authoritative, coming from the corridor to their right. Kale's entire body went tense. Ceres, he breathed. They pressed into a shadowed alcove as footsteps approached. 2 figures emerged, Ceres Vale and a man in council robes, both moving with purpose. Riven got her first look at Kale's former mate. Ceres was beautiful in the way winter is beautiful, sharp, cold, deadly. Tall and willowy, with pale blonde hair pulled back and in severe braid. Her face was all angles and edges, her eyes ice blue. She wore white and silver, council colors, and moved like she owned every inch of ground she walked on. The corruption around her was so thick Riven could barely breathe. The sickness serves its purpose, Ceres was saying. Fear keeps people compliant, desperate. They'll accept anything if we promise them safety. And if someone finds a cure? The councilman asked nervously. There is no cure, Ceres said flatly. I made sure of it. The corruption spreads too fast, roots too deep. By the time symptoms show, it's already terminal. Riven's fire surged hot and angry beneath her ribs. Liar. She could cure it. She'd already proven that. What about the marked? The councilman continued. Some people are saying their power could help. The marked are the cause. Ceres cut him off. That's the story, and you'll repeat it. Their unstable power created the plague. We're protecting people by exiling them, by hunting them down if necessary. Yes, my lady. They passed the alcove without looking. Riven held her breath until their footsteps faded. Kale's hands were clenched so tight his knuckles had gone white. She's killing her own people, he said, voice shaking with controlled rage. Creating a plague to consolidate power. And blaming it on us, Riven added. On the market. We need proof. Kale pushed away from the wall. Something undeniable, something she can't talk her way out of. Where would she keep it? Her chambers or the council vault? Kale thought for a moment. The vault's more secure, but it's also where official records are kept. If she's been documenting the plague's spread, the corruption methods, that's where it'll be. Can we get there? We can try. They followed Ceres's trail deeper into the palace. The corruption grew so thick, Riven had to actively push it back with her fire just to move forward. She was breathing hard, sweat beading on her forehead despite the cold. How are you doing? Kale asked quietly. I'll make it, Riven said through gritted teeth. But this place is saturated. She's been spreading corruption for months. Can you sense where it's strongest? Where the source might be? Riven closed her eyes, reaching out with everything she had. The fire responded, searching, seeking. There, deep below them, beneath even the dungeons, a wellspring of corruption so intense it made her stomach turn. Down, she gasped. Way down. There's some kind of source. It's massive. Kale's expression went grim. The old catacombs, they run beneath the palace. If Ceres has been experimenting with corruption, that's where she'd do it. Then that's where we need to go. They found stairs leading downward, narrow, spiral, carved from the same gray stone as the rest of the palace. Torches lined the walls, but many had burned out, leaving long stretches of darkness. Riven's fire provided light, silver flames dancing around her fingertips. She didn't bother hiding it now. Down here, subtlety wouldn't save them. The air grew colder as they descended, damper. The smell of rot and disease grew stronger. At the bottom, they found a long corridor lined with cells. Most were empty. Some weren't. Riven saw faces pressed against bars, pale, sick, covered in black veins. The corrupted, the dying. "She's keeping them alive," Kale said, horror in his voice. "She's using them as test subjects." One of the prisoners reached through the bars toward Riven. "Please," he croaked, "please help us." Riven's fire surged in response. She could help them, could burn the corruption out, cure them. Kale caught her arm. "Not yet. If you use that much power now, you'll alert everyone in the palace. We need to find the source first. These people are dying." "I know," Kale's voice was rough, "but if we don't stop Saris, thousands more will join them. We have to think bigger than this moment." Riven hated that he was right, hated leaving those people suffering in their cells, but she forced herself to keep moving. At the end of the corridor, they found it. A chamber. Massive, carved from raw stone and lit by an eerie green luminescence. And in the center, a pool. Not water, something darker, thicker. It bubbled and churned, releasing waves of corruption so intense, Riven nearly vomited. "What is that?" she whispered. "Concentrated silver blood," Kale said, his voice hollow. "Weaponized. Refined. This is how she's spreading the corruption. She's introducing it into the water supply, the food stores. We have to destroy it," Riven said. "Can your fire burn it?" "I don't know, but I'm damn well going to try." Riven stepped forward, raising her hands. The silver fire erupted, brighter than before, hot enough to make the air shimmer. She directed it at the pool, pouring everything she had into the flames. The corruption fought back. It surged up from the pool like a living thing, black and oily and hungry. It wrapped around her fire, trying to smother it, trying to pull it down into the darkness. Riven gritted her teeth and pushed harder. The fire responded, burning hotter, brighter, purer. The two forces clashed, silver against black, purification against corruption, and the chamber shook with the impact. Then she heard footsteps. Lots of them. "We've got company," Kale said. Guards poured into the chamber, a dozen, maybe more, all corrupted, all armed, and behind them, Saris Vale. She stood in the doorway, beautiful and terrible, a cold smile on her face. "Kale," she said, "I was wondering when you'd show up." Kale shifted smoothly, becoming the Black Wolf, positioning himself between Riven and the guards. "You can't win this," Saris continued. "You're outnumbered, outmatched. And even if you kill me, the corruption is already spreading. It's in the water, the food, the air. This city is mine." Riven's fire blazed brighter. Not for long. She thrust both hands toward the pool and released everything, every ounce of power she had, every bit of fire, every desperate hope that this would work. The silver flames exploded outward, consuming the pool in a blast of purifying heat. The corruption screamed, an actual sound, high and terrible, as it burned. The guards staggered. Some collapsed. The corruption in their veins was connected to the pool, and as it died, they felt it. Saris's smile vanished. No, but it was too late. The pool ignited. Silver fire raced through the chamber, following the corruption back to its source, burning it clean. The black liquid evaporated, hissing and shrieking until nothing remained but scorched stone. Riven collapsed to her knees, completely spent. Kale shifted back to human form and caught her before she hit the ground. "You did it," he said. "The source is destroyed." Saris stood frozen, staring at the empty basin where her weapon had been. Then her eyes, cold and furious, fixed on Riven. "You," she hissed. "You're marked." "Yeah," Riven managed. "And I just burned your plague to ash." Saris's hand went to the sword at her hip. "Then I'll have to kill you myself." She drew the blade and lunged. And Kale met her halfway, his own blade appearing in his hand. The two of them clashed in the center of the chamber, steel ringing against steel. Kale was stronger, but Ceres was fast, vicious, desperate. "I should have killed you myself," she spat. "Should have known the poison wouldn't be enough." "You made a mistake," Kale said coldly. "You forgot what I'm capable of." "And what's that?" "Surviving." He disarmed her with a brutal twist, sending her sword clattering across the stones. Then he had her throat, claws extended, one move away from ending it. Ceres smiled, blood on her teeth. "Do it. Kill me. Show them what kind of king you really are." Kale hesitated, and in that moment, Ceres pulled a hidden dagger and drove it toward his ribs. Riven's fire lashed out, wrapping around Ceres's wrist, burning the blade from her hand. "No," Riven said, pushing herself upright despite the exhaustion. "You don't get to manipulate him. And you don't get a quick death." She stepped forward, her fire still burning. "You wanted to blame the Marked for your plague? Fine. Let everyone see what we can actually do. Let them see us cure the people you tried to kill." Ceres's eyes widened. "You can't. Watch me." Riven turned to the guards, the ones still conscious, still corrupted. One by one, she placed her hands on them, burning the corruption from their veins. It hurt. It cost her, but she did it anyway. When she finished, a dozen guards stood free of corruption, staring at her with confusion and dawning understanding. "Tell them," Riven said. "Tell everyone what you saw here. Tell them the Marked aren't the enemy. Tell them who really poisoned this city." The guards looked at each other. Then slowly, they nodded. Kale dragged Ceres to her feet. "You wanted a trial? You'll get one. Public, transparent, where everyone can see what you've done." Ceres laughed bitterly. "You think they'll believe you? I'm on the council. I have support." "You had support," Kale corrected. "Built on lies and corruption. Let's see how long it lasts when the truth comes out." They hauled Ceres up the stairs, the freed guards following. By the time they reached the main palace, word had already spread. Servants gathered in hallways. Courtiers emerged from their rooms. And when they saw Kale, alive, whole, furious, everything stopped. "Get me Captain Thorne," Kale ordered. "And Lady Kira, and summon the council. All of them. It's time we had a conversation about treason." Riven leaned against a wall, exhausted beyond measure. Her fire was barely a flicker now. But as she watched Kale take command, watched people respond to his authority, she felt something shift. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. But they'd struck a blow. A real one. And for the first time since she'd saved him, Riven thought they might actually survive this. The throne room filled within the hour. Riven had never seen so many people packed into one space. Council members in their formal robes, nobles clutching their titles like shields, merchants who'd bought their way into influence, and common folk who'd somehow gotten word that the dead king had risen. They pressed against the walls, filled the galleries, craned their necks to see. She stood beside Kale at the base of the dais, acutely aware of how she looked, filthy, exhausted, her clothes still stained with blood from the catacombs. Every eye in the room tracked her movements, and she could feel the weight of their judgment. Marked, dangerous, other. Kale had changed into formal attire, black and silver, council colors, the wolf crest of his house prominent on his chest. He looked every inch the king now. Powerful, commanding, untouchable. Ceres knelt in chains at the center of the room, flanked by guards. The corruption was gone from her veins. Riven had burned it out, but her eyes still held that cold fury. Captain Thorne stood near the entrance, a solid presence, with gray-streaked hair and scars that told stories. Lady Kira occupied a seat in the front row, her sharp features set in careful neutrality. Both had arrived within minutes of being summoned, and both had looked at Kale like they'd seen a ghost. "The council will come to order," Kale's voice cut through the murmurs. Not loud, but absolute. Silence fell. "4 days ago, I was poisoned during a sanctioned hunt," Kale began. "Left to die in the wilderness by members of this council who believed they could seize power in my absence. They were wrong." More murmurs, shock rippling through the crowd. "The woman before you, Ceres Vale, orchestrated not only my attempted assassination, but also the plague currently ravaging our city. She weaponized silver blood corruption, introduced it into our water and food supplies, and then blamed the marked for the deaths that followed. Lies, Sarah said. Her voice was steady, controlled. The so-called evidence was manufactured. This entire spectacle is a desperate attempt to reclaim power through false accusations. Is it? Cale gestured toward Riven. Riven Hale is one of the marked. She saved my life. She destroyed the corruption source in the catacombs. And she cured a dozen guards of the very plague you claim the marked caused. Eyes turned to Riven. She forced herself to stand straight to meet their stares without flinching. I've seen the pool, Captain Thorne said, his voice gruff. Went down there myself after you surfaced. The corruption's gone, burned clean, and the guards confirm her story. The guards were compromised, Sarah shot back. Their testimony is unreliable. They're not compromised anymore, Riven said. The words came out harder than she'd intended. I purified them, burned the corruption from their blood. They're free to speak the truth now. Sarah's smile was cold. And we're simply supposed to take your word for it? The word of an exile? A marked abomination? The room erupted, shouting, arguments. Some people defended Riven, pointing to the cured guards. Others called for her arrest, her execution, demanding proof that she wasn't the real threat. Riven felt her fire stir beneath her ribs, responding to the hostility. Cale raised a hand. The room quieted, but the tension remained, thick and dangerous. There will be a formal investigation, he said. Transparent, public. Every member of this council will be examined for corruption. Every decision made in my absence will be reviewed, and those found guilty of treason will face justice. And who decides guilt? Asked a voice from the gallery. Lord Varen, one of the older nobles. You? The very person who stands to benefit from these accusations? Not me, Cale said. The evidence, the witnesses, the people themselves. The people are dying, Varen pressed. And you bring us a marked girl and claim she's our salvation? How convenient. Riven's hands clenched. She could feel the room turning, the momentum shifting. Fear and suspicion were easier to spread than trust. I can prove it, she said suddenly. Cale looked at her sharply. Riven. I can cure the sick, she continued, louder now. Publicly. Let everyone see what my power actually does. Not destruction. Not corruption. Healing. Absolutely not, Cale said. You're already drained. If you push yourself further, then I push myself, Riven cut him off. You said it yourself. We need undeniable proof. Let me give it to them. The room had gone silent again, everyone watching this exchange. Saris laughed, soft and mocking. How noble. The little marked girl wants to play hero. Tell me, how many can you cure before you collapse? 10? 20? There are hundreds infected, thousands exposed. You'll burn yourself out trying to save them all. Maybe, Riven said, but even one person cured is one person you failed to kill. Saris's expression hardened. Bring me the sick, Riven said, addressing the room. Anyone infected? Let me show you what silver fire can actually do. Cale grabbed her arm, pulling her aside. This is a mistake, he said quietly. You're playing into her hands. She wants you to exhaust yourself, to prove you're unstable. I know what she wants, Riven replied. But what choice do we have? These people don't trust me. They don't trust you right now. They need to see proof. It could kill you. So could doing nothing. Riven met his eyes. Let me do this. Let me show them we're not the monsters they think we are. Cale stared at her for a long moment. Then, reluctantly, he nodded. You feel yourself fading, you stop. That's not negotiable. Fine. They brought the sick into the throne room on stretchers. Men, women, children, all in various stages of corruption. Black veins spiderwebbing across their skin, fever-bright eyes, labored breathing. Riven knelt beside the first one, a young girl, maybe 8 years old. Her mother hovered nearby, eyes red from crying. What's her name? Riven asked. Mira, the mother whispered. Please, if you can help her. Riven placed her hands on the girl's chest. The fire came slower now, sluggish and tired, but it came. Silver flames wrapped around the child, gentle and warm. The corruption fought back. It was deeper here, more established. Riven had to dig for it, chase it through the girl's small body, burn it out piece by piece. Sweat dripped down her face. Her hand shook. But slowly, gradually, the black veins faded. The fever broke. The girl's breathing steadied. When Riven pulled her hands back, the child was clean, cured. The mother sobbed, gathering her daughter into her arms. Riven moved to the next patient, then the next, and the next. Each cure took more effort. Each purification drained her further. By the 10th person, her vision was blurring. By the 15th, she could barely stand. But she kept going. The room watched in absolute silence. Even Saris had stopped smiling. The 20th patient was an old man. The corruption so advanced he was barely conscious. Riven pressed her hands to his chest and felt her fire sputter. Not enough. She was running on empty. She pushed harder anyway. The fire flared one more time, weak, flickering, but pure. The corruption burned away. The old man's eyes opened, focused. "Thank you," he rasped. Riven tried to stand and couldn't. Her legs gave out. Kale caught her before she hit the floor, lifting her easily. "That's enough," he said. "You've proven your point." "More," Riven mumbled. "There are more." "No, you're done." He carried her to the edge of the dais, setting her down carefully. Riven's head spun. The room tilted. But she'd done it. 20 people cured. 20 lives saved. The room erupted in noise, not hostility this time, but something else. Awe, hope, fear of a different kind. "You see?" Kale's voice rang out. "This is what the marked can do, not cause plagues. Cure them. And Saris Vale tried to destroy that, tried to kill the very people who could save us." Saris struggled against her chains. "You're fools if you believe this theater. She's weakened herself, made herself vulnerable. Soon she'll lose control completely." "I've seen enough," Captain Thorne said, stepping forward. "My lord, I formally request permission to conduct a full investigation into council activities during your absence." "Granted," Kale said immediately. Lady Kira rose from her seat. "I second the motion, and I move that Saris Vale be held in custody pending trial for treason, conspiracy, and mass murder." A chorus of agreements followed. Even some of Saris's former supporters seemed to be reconsidering their positions. "This isn't over, Saris said, her voice low and venomous. "You think you've won? You've just started a war." "Then we'll finish it," Kale replied coldly. "Take her to the cells, deep cells, and postguards, uncorrupted ones." As guards dragged Saris away, she caught Riven's eye. "Enjoy your moment, little fire. It won't last. Nothing pure ever does in this world." Then she was gone. Riven slumped against the wall, breathing hard. Her fire was barely a spark now. She felt hollow, used up. Kale dismissed the crowd, issuing orders to various captains and advisors. Within minutes, the throne room had emptied except for a handful of people. Thorne, Kira, Mirathane, who'd somehow slipped in during the chaos, and Kale himself. "That was reckless," Kira said to Riven, not unkindly, but firm. "It was necessary," Riven replied. "It was both," Thorne said. "Reckless and necessary." The question now is what happens next? Saris still has supporters, and public opinion is fragile. We move fast, Kale said. Investigation starts immediately. We root out every council member involved in the conspiracy. Publicly, transparently. No secret tribunals, no closed-door decisions. "And the marked?" Mira asked. "Riven's not the only one out there. If people see what she can do, they'll want more. They'll want all the marked brought back, put to work curing the sick." "I'm not a tool," Riven said sharply. "I know that," Mira replied. "But they won't. They'll see power and want to control it." "Then we make it clear that's not how this works," Kale said. "The marked who want to return, who want to help, will be welcomed, protected, given resources to learn control. But no one will be forced. No one will be enslaved." "You'll need to put that in writing," Kira said. "Official decree, signed and sealed before the council can object. Consider it done." Riven closed her eyes, listening to them plan. Part of her wanted to feel relieved. They'd exposed Saris, saved lives, started to turn things around. But Saris's words echoed in her head. You've just started a war. She was right. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. The next 3 days blurred together. Cale threw himself into investigations, pulling council records, interviewing witnesses, building cases against the conspirators. Thorn organized uncorrupted guards into new patrol units. Kira drafted legislation protecting the marked. And Riven rested, or tried to. Her fire had retreated deep inside her, recovering from the massive expenditure. She felt its absence like a missing limb. The warmth, the constant presence, all gone quiet. Healers checked on her regularly, worried she'd pushed too far, damaged something permanent. But Riven knew better. The fire wasn't gone, just sleeping. On the 4th day, she woke to shouting. She dragged herself from bed, stumbling to the window. Below in the palace courtyard, crowds had gathered. Hundreds of people, maybe thousands. And they were angry. What's happening? She asked when Cale appeared in her doorway. Riots, he said grimly. Saris's supporters are calling the investigation a witch hunt. They're demanding her release. How many supporters does she have left? Too many. The old families mostly. People who profited from the old system. They see reform as a threat. Riven pulled on her clothes, ignoring her body's protests. Where are you going? To address them. Not alone, you're not. Cale started to argue, then stopped. You're in no condition? I'm going, Riven said flatly. You need me there. They need to see we're united. They might kill you. They might try. They descended to the courtyard together. The crowd grew louder as Cale appeared, some cheering, others jeering. Riven could feel the hostility rolling off certain sections like heat from a forge. Cale raised his hands. The noise slowly died down. I know you're angry, he said. I know you're scared. Change is frightening. But what Ceres did, poisoning our people, weaponizing corruption, that cannot stand. She brought order, someone shouted from the crowd. She brought death, Cale countered. Hundreds dead. Thousands more would have followed. Is that the order you want? Better than chaos, another voice called. Better than trusting marked abominations. The crowd surged forward. Guards moved to intercept, but they were outnumbered. Riven felt her fire stir. Weak, but present. I'm marked, she said. Not shouting, but her voice carried. And I've killed no one. I've cured 20 people. Saved lives. Is that what you fear? Healing? We fear what you'll become, but Lord Varen pushed to the front of the crowd. Marked always lose control eventually. Always turn violent. It's in your blood. That's a lie, Riven said. Is it? Varen's smile was ugly. Tell me, girl, have you never lost control? Never hurt someone accidentally? Riven's chest tightened. She thought of the supply shed, the traitor, the fear in people's eyes. I have, she admitted, before I understood my power, before anyone taught me control. But that doesn't make me a monster. It makes me someone who needed help and didn't get it. And now you want us to believe you're safe? Varen pressed. How convenient. The crowd was getting uglier, angrier. Riven could feel the momentum shifting toward violence. Then a voice cut through the chaos. She saved my daughter. The crowd parted. The woman from the throne room, Mira's mother, stepped forward, holding her child's hand. My girl was dying. The healers said there was nothing they could do, and she cured her, didn't ask for payment, didn't demand anything, just healed her. And my father, another voice. The old man Riven had cured, leaning on a cane but upright. I was hours from death. She brought me back. More voices, more people Riven had healed. They pushed forward, forming a barrier between her and the hostile crowd. The marked aren't our enemies, God, the old man said. Fear is. Ignorance is. And people like Ceres who use both to control us. Varen's expression darkened. You're making a mistake. All of you. When she loses control, when she burns this city to ash, then I'll stop her, Cale said. His voice was steel. That's my job. To protect this city. From external threats and internal ones. Saris was an internal threat. I'm removing her. If you have evidence she's innocent, present it. Otherwise, the investigation continues. And if we refuse to accept your authority? Varen challenged. Then you're welcome to leave the territories, Kale said flatly. I won't stop you, but I also won't let you sabotage the stability we're trying to build. The crowd wavered. Some people started to disperse. Others remained, hostile but uncertain. Varen glared at Kale, then at Riven. This isn't over, he said quietly. No, Kale agreed. It's not. Varen left, taking a significant portion of the crowd with him. The courtyard slowly emptied. Riven's legs were shaking. She'd barely held herself upright during the confrontation. You did well, Kale said quietly. I almost got us killed. But you didn't. And the people who matter, the ones you saved, they stood with you. That matters. Riven wanted to believe him, but Varen's parting words echoed in her mind. This isn't over. Nothing ever was. That night, Riven woke to screaming. She bolted upright, fire surging instinctively to her hands. The palace was in chaos, guards running through hallways, alarms ringing, smoke rising from the eastern wing. She threw on clothes and ran. The eastern wing was burning. Not normal fire, corruption fire. Black flames that spread like oil, consuming everything they touched. Riven found Kale in the main corridor, organizing evacuation efforts. What happened? Attack, he said shortly. Someone breached this palace. Set fires. Guards are trying to contain it, but the corruption is spreading too fast. Where? Everywhere. Coordinated. At least 6 different locations. Riven's mind raced. Saris? Escaped an hour ago, killed 3 guards and disappeared into the city. The pieces clicked together. The riots, the distractions, all of it designed to pull resources away from the dungeons. She planned this from the beginning, Riven said. Yes, and now she's making her move. An explosion rocked the palace. Stone cracked. Part of the ceiling collapsed, raining debris. Kale grabbed Riven, pulling her clear. We need to evacuate. The whole structure is compromised. What about the people still inside? Guards are sweeping every room. Another explosion, closer this time. The floor buckled. Riven's fire blazed bright, sensing the corruption in the flames. I can stop it. The fire. If I can reach the sources. There are too many sources. You can't be everywhere at once. Then I'll prioritize. Riven pulled free from his grip. Get everyone out. I'll handle the fires. Riven, we don't have time to argue. She ran before he could stop her. The corruption fire was worst in the lower levels, spreading through the catacombs, feeding on the residual silver blood Saris had left behind. Riven could feel it calling to her, challenging her. She descended into smoke and chaos, her silver fire pushing back the darkness. The first source was in the old armory, a pool of burning corruption that had already consumed half the room. Riven thrust her hands into the flames, letting her fire meet the corruption head-on. The clash was immediate and violent. Black against silver, destruction against purification. Riven pushed harder, pouring power into the silver flames. The corruption fought back, trying to overwhelm her, trying to corrupt her fire itself. But she held firm. Slowly, inch by inch, the silver fire consumed the black. The corruption screamed, that same terrible sound from the catacombs, and then died. 1 source down, 5 to go. Riven ran to the next location. The library. The shelves were already burning, centuries of knowledge turning to ash. The corruption had pooled in the center, a swirling mass of black flame. She attacked it the same way, fire against fire, refusing to yield. By the 3rd source, Riven was struggling. Her fire was dimming. Her body was screaming at her to stop. She didn't stop. 4th source. 5th source. Each one took longer. Each one cost more. By the time she reached the 6th source, deep in the servants' quarters, Riven could barely stand. Her fire was a weak flicker. Her vision was tunneling, but she couldn't stop. If this fire spread, the entire palace would fall. Hundreds of people would die. She staggered forward, hands outstretched, and someone grabbed her from behind. Saris. Foolish girl, she hissed in Riven's ear. Did you really think you could beat me? You're nothing. A failed experiment, a genetic mistake. She threw Riven into the corruption fire. Riven hit the flames and felt them wrap around her, cold and hungry and wrong. The corruption poured into her, seeking her fire, trying to consume it from within. She screamed. The silver fire responded, not gently, not controlled, but explosive. It erupted from every inch of her skin, blazing white-hot and furious. The corruption recoiled, burned, died. But the fire didn't stop. It spread outward, consuming everything. The room, the hallway, racing through the palace in a wave of purifying heat. Riven felt herself slipping, felt the fire taking over, burning out of control. This was what Varen had warned about, what everyone feared. The moment when power became too much, when control became impossible. She was losing herself to the flames. Then someone grabbed her. Kale. He stood in the center of the inferno, unburned, his gray eyes locked on hers. Riven, look at me. She tried. It was like looking through smoke. You're not alone, he said. You don't have to fight this by yourself. I can't stop it. Then don't. Give it to me. What? Kale took her hands. Your fire, your power. Give it to me. Let me help you carry it. It'll kill you. It won't, trust me. Riven didn't have a choice. The fire was consuming her. In seconds, she'd burn completely out or explode and take the whole palace with her. She let go. The fire poured into Kale, through their joined hands, through the bond of partnership they'd forged, through something deeper that neither of them had named yet. Silver flames wrapped around him, not burning, but merging. Combining with his strength, his control, his alpha power, Kale's eyes blazed silver. Power radiated from him in waves. Together, they directed the fire, not to destroy, but to purify, to heal. The corruption in the palace burned away, every trace of it, every shadow, every infection, gone. When the fire finally died, they stood in a courtyard that had been scoured clean. The stones beneath their feet gleamed. The air tasted pure. Riven collapsed. Kale caught her, lowering them both to the ground. What did we just do? She whispered. Something new, Kale said. His voice was rough, shaken. Something that shouldn't be possible. They'd merged their powers, fused them into something greater than either alone. And the entire palace had seen it. Riven looked up at the windows, at the faces pressed against the glass. Hundreds of people, all watching, all afraid. They're going to think I'm a monster, she said. No, Kale replied. They're going to think you're a weapon, and they're going to want to control you. Footsteps echoed. Guards approached, not threatening, but wary. Behind them, Saris emerged from the shadows, wounded, bleeding, but alive. You see? She called out to the watching crowd. You see what she is? What they both are? Too much power, too dangerous to exist. She raised a hand. Riven saw the glint of steel, another hidden blade. Saris threw it, not at Riven, at Kale. Riven's fire blazed one last time, creating a shield of silver flame. The blade disintegrated before it reached them, but the effort cost her. Everything went dark. The last thing she heard was Kale's voice, desperate and commanding. Get a healer, now! Then nothing. When Riven woke, the world had changed. She could feel it, in the air, in the silence, in the way Kale sat beside her bed with his head in his hands. How long? She asked. He looked up. Relief flooded his features. 2 days. You've been unconscious for 2 days. Saris? Captured. Again. In chains that not even corruption can break this time. And the palace? Clean, purified. You saved it. Kale's expression was complicated. But there's something you need to know. Riven's stomach dropped. What? The council met while you were unconscious. They've declared you a threat, a weapon too dangerous to remain free. What does that mean? Kale's hands clenched. It means they're coming for you, and this time I might not be able to stop them. The room went cold. Riven stared at Kale, trying to process what he'd just said. The council, The same people she'd saved from corruption, the same city she'd nearly died protecting, had declared her a threat. When? Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Yesterday morning. Emergency session. They voted 12-3. Cale's jaw was tight. Varen led the charge, said what happened in the courtyard proved you're unstable, that merging our powers was an act of aggression, not defense. That's insane, Ceres threw the blade. I know. I testified to that. Thorn and Kira backed me up. Didn't matter. He stood, pacing to the window. They're scared, and scared people make terrible decisions. Riven pushed herself upright despite her body's protests. Every muscle ached. Her fire was barely a whisper. What's the vote mean? Exile? Execution? Containment. The word tasted bitter in Kyle's mouth. They want you locked in the deep cells, collared with silver blood suppressors, kept as a strategic asset they can deploy when convenient. A weapon. Yes. Riven laughed, sharp and humorless. So I go from exile to prisoner. That's the reward for saving their lives? I won't let it happen, Kale said. You might not have a choice. You said it yourself. You can't stop them. I said I might not be able to. Kale turned to face her. But I'm going to try. The vote isn't absolute. I can challenge it. Force a public tribunal where evidence is presented to the entire city, not just the council. And you think that'll work? After what they saw? I think it's our only option besides running. The word hung between them. Running. Leaving the capital. Abandoning everything they'd fought for. Part of Riven wanted to disappear into the wilderness again, where the only person she had to worry about was herself, where power and politics and fear couldn't touch her. But she was tired of running. No, she said. We fight. We make them see the truth. Kale's expression shifted, relief mixed with something else. Pride, maybe. It won't be easy. Varen has support, old money, old families who see reform as theft. Then we show them what they're really supporting. Show them what Ceres did. All of it. Riven swung her legs off the bed, ignoring the dizziness. Where is she now? Deep cells, maximum security. She's been screaming conspiracy theories to anyone who'll listen. Let her scream. People saw what she did. Saw the corruption fires. Saw her try to kill you. They also saw you lose control, Kale said quietly. Saw the fire consume half the palace before we contained it together. That's what they'll remember. That's what Varen's counting on. Riven's hands clenched. He was right. Fear had a longer memory than gratitude. A knock at the door interrupted them. Mirathane entered without waiting for permission, her expression grim. We've got problems, she said. Bigger than the council vote. What now? Kale asked. Riots. 3 different districts. People are demanding Riven's arrest. Others are demanding her freedom. It's getting violent. Mira tossed a blood-stained cloth onto the table. 5 dead so far. Dozen more injured. Riven felt sick. They're killing each other over me? They're killing each other over fear, Mira corrected. Over what you represent. Change. Power. The unknown. She looked at Kale. You need to address this. Now. Before the whole city tears itself apart. Kale was already moving, grabbing his coat. Where's the worst fighting? Market District, near the old temple. Get Thorn. Tell him to mobilize every uncorrupted guard we have. Non-lethal force only. I want order restored, not bodies piling up. Mira nodded and left. Riven stood. I'm coming with you. No, you're staying here where it's safe. Safe? Riven gestured at the room. There's nowhere safe for me anymore, and hiding makes me look guilty. If we're going to fight this, I need to be visible. Need to show them I'm not a monster. Or you'll give them exactly what they're afraid of. A target. Then let them see the target isn't afraid of them. They stared at each other. Kale broke first, swearing under his breath. Fine, but you stay close to me, and if things get dangerous, they're already dangerous. They left the palace through a side entrance, flanked by Thorn's best guards. The streets were chaos. Smoke rising from burning shops, crowds clashing in the intersections, guards trying desperately to separate combatants. Riven saw a woman holding a sign, Exile the Marked. Next to her, A man held one reading, "Free Riven Hail." Both groups were throwing stones at each other. "This is madness," Thorn muttered, arriving with reinforcements. "My lord, we need to clear the streets, impose martial law until things settle." "That'll just make it worse," Kale said. "Make them feel like prisoners in their own city." "Then what do you suggest?" Kale looked at Riven. "We give them what they want, a tribunal, public, today. Let everyone see the evidence. Let them decide." "You're insane," Thorn said flatly. "The city's barely holding together. A tribunal will just be a spark to kindling. Or it'll be the truth they need to hear." Kale raised his voice, projecting over the crowd. "Citizens of the Northern Territories." The fighting didn't stop immediately, but it slowed. People turned, recognizing the Alpha King. "I know you're afraid," Kale continued. "I know you're angry. I know what happened at the palace was terrifying, but fear and anger won't protect you. The truth will." He gestured toward the old temple. "In 1 hour, there will be a public tribunal. All evidence regarding Saris Vale's conspiracy and Riven Hale's actions will be presented. Every citizen is invited to attend, to witness, to judge for themselves." "And if we judge her guilty?" someone shouted from the crowd. "Then the law will be followed," Kale said. "But it will be transparent, fair, not decided in closed rooms by people with their own agendas." The crowd murmured. Some people started dispersing. Others remained, hostile but listening. Varen appeared from a side street, flanked by his own guards. "You're undermining the council's authority," he said coldly. "I'm exercising mine, Kale replied. "The people have a right to see the evidence, unless you're afraid of what they'll find." Varen's eyes narrowed. "I'm afraid of mob justice, of letting emotion override reason. Then present your case. Convince them with facts, not fear." Varen looked like he wanted to argue further, but the crowd was watching, waiting. He couldn't refuse without looking guilty himself. 1 hour, he said finally. "But if this descends into chaos, the blood is on your hands." He left with his guards. Thorn exhaled slowly. "That bought us time. Not much, but some." "Then we use it," Kale said. He turned to Riven. "Can you hold yourself together for this? If your fire flares during testimony—" "I'll control it," Riven said. Even as the words left her mouth, she felt the fire stir, weak, uncertain, but present. She had to believe she could do this. They spent the next hour preparing. Kira arrived with documents, council records, witness statements, evidence of Saris's corruption network. Mira brought survivors from the catacombs, people Riven had cured, families who'd lost loved ones to the plague. The old temple filled quickly. It was one of the few buildings large enough to hold the crowd, a massive stone structure with high ceilings and acoustics that carried every word. People packed the pews, stood along the walls, pressed into every available space. Riven sat at a table in front, Kale beside her. Across the aisle, Varen led the prosecution with 3 other council members. At the center, Lady Kira presided as neutral arbiter. "This tribunal is now in session," she announced. "We are here to examine evidence regarding 2 matters, the conspiracy led by Saris Vale and the actions of Riven Hale during the recent crisis. Both sides will present their cases. The people will judge." Varen stood first. "I will be brief. Saris Vale's crimes are documented and undeniable. She conspired to murder our king. She created a plague. She attacked the palace. For these crimes, she should face execution." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. "However," Varen continued, "we must also address the threat posed by Riven Hale, a marked individual whose power is demonstrably unstable, who lost control and nearly destroyed our palace, who merged her abilities with the king's in an unprecedented act that could have killed them both." He gestured toward Riven. "She may have helped expose Saris, but she is still dangerous, still unpredictable. The council's vote to contain her was not cruelty. It was prudence. We cannot risk another incident." The crowd's mood shifted, fear creeping back in. Kira looked at Kale. "Your response?" Kale stood. "Riven Hale saved my life in the wilderness, destroyed the corruption source that was poisoning our city, cured dozens of citizens, including children, of a plague designed to kill them. And yes, She lost control when Ceres threw her into corruption fire. But that loss of control didn't destroy the palace. It purified it, burned away every trace of infection. He pulled out documents. These are testimonies from guards who were corrupted, from families whose loved ones were cured, from servants who witnessed Ceres's conspiracies firsthand. All of them confirm the same thing. Riven is not our enemy. Fear is. Fear exists for a reason, Varen shot back, to protect us from danger, and she is dangerous. So am I, Kale said flatly. I can kill a man with my bare hands, tear through a dozen guards in wolf form. Does that make me too dangerous to exist? You have control. So does she, most of the time, and when she didn't, it was because she was trying to save lives, not take them. Varen's expression hardened. You're blinded by sentiment, by whatever bond formed between you, but the rest of us see clearly. Do you? Riven stood, her voice cutting through the argument. Both men turned to her. The crowd went silent. I've been called dangerous my whole life, Riven said. Cursed, broken, an abomination. My own pack threw me out because they were afraid of what I might become. She looked around the temple, meeting eyes. And maybe they were right to be afraid. Maybe I am dangerous. But you know what's more dangerous? People like Ceres. People who weaponize that fear, who use it to control you, to make you hurt each other. She stepped forward. I didn't choose to be marked, didn't choose this power, but I chose to use it to help people, to heal instead of harm. And yeah, I'm not perfect. I lost control. I scared you. But I'm still here, still trying, still fighting to be more than what you're afraid I'll become. Her fire flickered around her hands, gentle, controlled, barely visible. This is what I am. Not a monster, not a weapon, just someone trying to survive in a world that wants me dead or caged. The silence stretched. Then a voice from the crowd. She saved my son. Everyone turned. A man stood in the back pews holding a small boy. He was dying, black veins everywhere. The healer said hours, maybe minutes, and she cured him, didn't ask for anything, just saved him. Another voice. She cured my wife, my brother, my daughter. One by one, people stood, families Riven had healed, guards she'd purified, servants who'd witnessed her exhaustion, her determination, her refusal to give up even when it was killing her. Varen's expression grew darker with each testimony. Kira raised a hand. The tribunal recognizes these testimonies. However, we must also address the incident at the palace. The uncontrolled fire, the merging of powers. These are unprecedented events that require examination. They're unprecedented because they were necessary, Kale said. He pulled Riven close, not romantic, but partnership. When Ceres threw Riven into the corruption fire, she was dying, burning from the inside out. I had seconds to act, so I did what any partner would do. I helped her carry the burden and created a fusion of power never seen before, Varen said. Power that could topple kingdoms if misused, or save them if used right. Kale's voice was steel. That's the choice, fear or trust, cages or freedom. I choose trust. The crowd was wavering. Riven could feel it, the balance tipping. Then the temple doors burst open. A guard stumbled in, bleeding, gasping for breath. Attack! The outer districts, they're under siege! The crowd erupted in panic. Kale grabbed the guard. Who's attacking? Ceres's army, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They breached the eastern wall. That's impossible, Thorne said. Ceres is in the cells. Was in the cells, the guard corrected. She escaped during the tribunal. Had help from inside. Varen's face went pale. Kale rounded on him. You orchestrated this. Used the tribunal as a distraction. I did no such thing. Varen backed away. I wanted her contained, not freed. An explosion rocked the temple. Screams, chaos. Riven's fire blazed to life, instinct taking over. She could sense them, corrupted soldiers pouring through the streets. Hundreds of them, all infected with the same silver blood poison Ceres had been cultivating. This was the real attack, the final move. Kale shifted to wolf form, rallying guards. Thorne was shouting orders, trying to organize a defense, but they were caught off guard, unprepared. The corrupted soldiers hit the temple minutes later. Riven met them at the entrance, fire blazing. She burned through the first wave, purifying them where they stood. But there were too many. For everyone she cured, 3 more appeared. "Fall back," Thorn yelled. "Protect the civilians." They retreated deeper into the temple, using the narrow corridors as choke points. Kale, in wolf form, tore through corrupted soldiers. Riven burned them clean. Thorn's guards held the line, but they were being pushed back. Overwhelmed. Riven felt her fire dimming. She'd used too much already. Couldn't sustain this. Then she saw her. Ceres, standing in the temple entrance, backlit by fire. She'd changed. The corruption had taken her fully now. Black veins covered her skin. Her eyes glowed with sick green light. "You should have killed me when you had the chance," Ceres called out. "Now you'll watch everything burn." She raised her hands. The corruption surged forward, not as soldiers, but as a wave of liquid darkness. Riven tried to stop it. Her fire met the wave and was swallowed whole. Not enough. She didn't have enough power left. Kale shifted back to human, standing beside her. "Together," he said. "It didn't work last time until I was dying. Then we do it differently." Kale took her hand. "You give me permission. I give you mine. Willingly. Equally." Riven understood. Last time, the fusion had been desperate, forced. This time, they chose it. "Partners," she said. "Partners," Kale agreed. Their powers merged. Not violently, not desperately, but deliberately. Riven's silver fire met Kale's alpha strength and braided together into something new, something balanced. The combined power exploded outward, a wave of purifying flame that met Ceres's corruption and burned it to nothing. Ceres screamed. The corruption boiled off her in black smoke. But she didn't fall. Instead, she laughed. "You think you've won? This is just the beginning. I have armies, supporters across every territory. You can't stop." Riven's fire lashed out, wrapping around Ceres, not burning, revealing, and the crowd saw the true extent of her corruption, saw how deep the infection had spread, saw that she was no longer even truly human, just a vessel for the poison she'd been spreading. "This is what she became," Riven said, her voice carrying through the temple. "This is what corruption does. Not power, not the marked, her choices, her greed, her willingness to sacrifice everything for control." The fire burned brighter, and the corruption screamed one final time before dying completely. Ceres collapsed, purified but broken, alive, but powerless. The corrupted soldiers fell with her. The connection severed, they dropped where they stood. Silence filled the temple. Riven and Kale stood in the center, still connected, still glowing with combined power. Then they separated, the fusion dissolving naturally. Riven swayed. Kale caught her. The crowd stared. Not in fear this time, in awe. "She saved us," someone whispered. Both of them did. Varen stood frozen, his entire argument shattered. He'd called Riven dangerous, called the fusion an act of aggression. But the entire city had just watched it save their lives. Kira stepped forward. "I believe we have our verdict." The crowd murmured agreement. Not unanimous, nothing ever was. But enough. Enough to matter. Thorn moved to secure Ceres, binding her with chains. "What do we do with her?" "Trial," Kale said. "Real one this time. Public, transparent. Let everyone see what she did, what she became." He looked at Riven. "And her?" The question hung in the air. Kira addressed the crowd. "All in favor of pardoning Riven Hale and recognizing her service to the territories?" Hands raised, hundreds of them. Not all. Riven saw pockets of resistance, people still afraid, still uncertain, but more than half, more than enough. "Motion carries," Kira said. "Riven Hale is recognized as a free citizen with full rights and protections." Riven felt something loosen in her chest. Not quite relief, not quite victory, but something close. She was free. Not forgiven by everyone, not trusted completely, but free. Kale addressed the crowd. "Ceres is defeated. The corruption is purged, but the work isn't finished. We need to rebuild, to heal, to create a system where power serves people, not the other way around. He looked at Riven. And we need to bring back the marked. Give them a place here. Training, protection, purpose. The crowd shifted. Some nodded. Others looked uncertain. It won't be easy, Kale continued. Change never is, but it's necessary. We can't keep exiling people out of fear, can't keep caging what we don't understand. Varen spoke up, his voice bitter. And if they lose control, if another marked burns down half the city? Then we deal with it, Riven said, together, with training, with support, with the understanding that people make mistakes, but that doesn't make them monsters. She looked around the temple. I'm not asking you to stop being afraid. Fear keeps you alive. But don't let it make you cruel. Don't let it make you into what you're afraid of. The crowd was quiet, processing. Then the mother from earlier, Mira's mother, spoke. My daughter is alive because of you. That matters more than fear. Others echoed her, slowly, hesitantly, but genuine. Varen looked around, saw the momentum shifting, and made a choice. I maintain my concerns, he said stiffly, but I will not stand in the way of the will of the people. It wasn't acceptance, but it was close enough. The tribunal dissolved. People filtered out of the temple, talking, arguing, trying to make sense of everything they'd witnessed. Riven stood in the center of it all, exhausted and empty and somehow, for the first time in her life, not alone. Kale squeezed her shoulder. You did it. We did it, Riven corrected. Fair enough. He smiled, tired but real. What happens now? Riven looked at the temple, at the city beyond, at the future stretching uncertain and dangerous and possible in front of them. Now we figure out what comes next. The reconstruction began the next morning. Riven stood on the palace balcony, watching crews clear rubble from the eastern wing. Smoke still rose from scattered fires, but the air tasted cleaner than it had in weeks. The corruption was gone, burned out. The city could breathe again. You should be resting, Kale said, joining her. He carried 2 cups of something hot that smelled like herbs and honey. I've been resting for 3 days, Riven replied, accepting the cup. Any longer and I'll go crazy. Fair enough. Kale leaned against the railing. Thorn's organizing relief efforts in the outer districts, food distribution, medical care. Kira's drafting new council protocols. And Ceres? Deep cells, real ones this time. No windows, no visitors except official interrogators. His expression darkened. She's been talking, giving up names, trying to bargain for leniency. Will she get it? No, but the information's valuable. Turns out her network was bigger than we thought. Sympathizers in 4 other territories, plans for coordinated uprisings. Riven's stomach turned. She was planning a war. She was planning an empire built on corruption and fear. Kale sipped his drink. But it's over now. The networks are being dismantled, leaders arrested. It'll take time, but we'll root them all out. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the city wake up. The council wants to see you, Kale said finally. Official meeting, this afternoon. Riven tensed. To thank me or lock me up? Neither. To negotiate. Kale's mouth quirked. Turns out surviving an attempted coup and saving the city gives you leverage. Who knew? What do they want? Same thing everyone wants. Certainty, control. They're terrified of what you represent, power they can't predict or contain. But they also saw what happened when they tried to cage you, saw the people stand up for you. So they want a compromise. They want a framework, rules, boundaries, something that makes them feel safe while keeping you free. Riven considered that. Part of her wanted to tell them where they could shove their framework. But she was tired of fighting, tired of being seen as a threat. What do you think I should do? She asked. Kale met her eyes. I think you should decide what you want, not what they want, not what I want. What do you need to feel like you belong here? The question hit harder than expected. What did she want? Freedom? Obviously. But freedom to do what? Wander the territories alone? Go back to surviving day by day with no purpose except not dying? She'd had that. It had been empty. I want to help people, she said slowly. Other marked who are lost like I was. who don't understand their power, who've been thrown away. Then tell them that. Make it part of the agreement. The council meeting that afternoon was tense but civil. They gathered in a smaller chamber, just 12 council members, Kale, Riven, and Kira as mediator. No crowds, no theatrics, just negotiation. Varen spoke first. Miss Hale, the council recognizes your service to the territories. Your actions saved lives. However, we must address the practical concerns your presence raises. Such as? Riven kept her voice level. Control, accountability, prevention of future incidents. Varen clasped his hands. We propose a formal position. Royal Advisor on Marked Affairs. You would work directly with the king, help establish protocols for identifying and training other marked individuals, and serve as a point of contact between our government and those with unusual abilities. Riven raised an eyebrow. You want to give me an official title? We want to integrate you into the system, another council member said. Make you part of the solution rather than an unknown variable. And if I refuse, then you're free to leave, Varen said. No one will stop you. No charges, no pursuit, but we'd prefer you stay. It was a trap dressed as an opportunity. Riven could see it clearly. Accept the position and she'd be bound by rules, oversight, expectations. Refuse and she'd be free, but alone again. What's the catch, she asked. Kira cleared her throat. The position comes with conditions. You'd be required to undergo formal training in power control, submit to regular evaluations, report any incidents of instability, and accept a partner who can counter me if I lose control, Riven finished. Someone who can stop me if necessary. For everyone's safety, Varen said, including yours. Riven looked at Kale. He'd been quiet through this whole discussion. What do you think? She asked him directly. I think they're asking you to put yourself in chains, Kale said bluntly. Several council members flinched. Calling it a partnership doesn't change what it is. Oversight, control, the same fear that led to your exile in the first place. But with structure this time, Kira added, with support instead of abandonment. It's not perfect, but it's better than what came before. Riven turned back to the council. I'll accept the position, on one condition, which is, I get to choose my partner, and I get to establish the training protocols for other marked, not you. You can review them, can provide resources, but the actual methods are mine to develop. The council members exchanged glances. That's 2 conditions, Varen pointed out. Fine. 2 conditions. Take them or leave them. More glances. Quiet discussion. Finally, Varen nodded. Agreed. With the stipulation that training protocols must be reviewed by council safety advisors before implementation. Reviewed, not controlled, Riven clarified. Reviewed, Varen confirmed. They spent the next hour hammering out details. Salary, more money than Riven had seen in her life. Housing, quarters in the palace, or a private residence if she preferred. Authority, she'd have the power to requisition resources, travel freely between territories, and make binding decisions regarding marked individuals. It was more than she'd ever expected, more than she'd ever allowed herself to hope for. When the meeting ended, council members filed out. Some nodded to her respectfully, others avoided eye contact. Varen lingered. I still don't trust you, he said quietly. But I respect what you did. That's more than I can say for most people. I don't need your trust, Riven replied, just your cooperation. You'll have it, for now. He left. Kale and Riven walked back through the palace corridors. So, Kale said, Royal Advisor. That's quite a promotion from exile. Don't remind me. Riven shook her head. A month ago I was eating snow and hiding from wolves. Now I'm making policy decisions. Life comes at you fast. They reached Riven's quarters, temporary rooms until she decided whether to stay in the palace or find her own place. The space was nice, warm, clean, everything her exile had lacked. About the partner requirement, Kale said. Have you decided who you'll choose? Riven turned to face him. I thought that was obvious. Humor me. You, if you'll agree to it. Kale's expression was unreadable. You know what that means? We'd be bound together, officially, not just allies but actual partners in governance. I know. It would complicate things. People will talk. Assume motives that aren't there. Let them talk. Riven stepped closer. You said we were partners back in that safe house. Said we'd face this together. I'm holding you to that. Even knowing what it costs? Kale asked. The scrutiny, the expectations, the fact that your power and mine are now permanently linked in the public mind? Especially knowing that. Riven met his eyes. I trust you. That's not something I give easily. Something shifted in Kale's expression. The careful control slipped, revealing something rawer underneath. I'm not a good man, Riven. I've made terrible decisions, hurt people. The exile decree alone was a mistake you're trying to fix, Riven interrupted. I'm not looking for perfection. I'm looking for someone who sees me as a person, not a weapon or a threat. You've done that from the start. Have I? Kale's laugh was bitter. I recruited you to help expose traitors, used your power for my own goals. And I chose to help, chose to stay, chose this. Riven touched his arm. Stop trying to push me away. It won't work. They stood close enough that Riven could feel the warmth radiating from him, could see the silver still lingering in his eyes from their last fusion. This is a bad idea, Kale said quietly. Probably. People will object, say I'm showing favoritism, using my position to keep you close. They're already saying worse. It could destroy everything we're trying to build. Or it could be exactly what we need. Riven's fire flickered around her fingertips. You said it yourself. We're stronger together. Why fight that? Kale caught her hand, his larger one engulfing hers. You're sure about this? I'm sure. He squeezed gently. Then, yes, I'll be your partner, officially, whatever that means. It means we face whatever comes next together, Riven said. No more going it alone. No more going it alone, Kale agreed. They stood like that for a long moment. Not quite romantic, too much history, too much trauma for that simplicity, but connected, bound by something deeper than politics or power. A knock at the door broke the moment. Mira entered without waiting for permission. Sorry to interrupt, she said, not sounding sorry at all. But you're both needed downstairs. We've got visitors. What kind of visitors, Hoso? Kale asked. The kind you've been hoping for. Mira's smile was sharp. The market are coming home. They arrived throughout the day. Some came alone, cautious and uncertain. Others traveled in small groups, seeking safety in numbers. All of them carried the same haunted look Riven recognized from her own reflection. The exhaustion of constantly running, constantly hiding, constantly being hunted. She met them in the palace courtyard, Kale beside her. The first was a young man, maybe 20 years old, with eyes that glowed faint gold. I heard rumors, he said, that it was safe here now, that the Alpha King was bringing Marked back. It's true, Riven said. What's your name? Finn. My power is, I can see corruption. Like you can, I think, but I can't burn it out, just identify it. That's still valuable. We need people who can detect threats. Riven gestured toward the palace. There's food inside. Rooms. Safety. No one will hurt you here. Finn's eyes filled with tears. I haven't heard those words in 3 years. More arrivals. A woman who could heal minor injuries but couldn't control when the power activated. Twin brothers whose fire was blue instead of silver and burned cold rather than hot. An older man who could sense lies but was going deaf from the constant noise of deception. Each one broken in their own way. Each one desperate for a place to belong. By evening, there were 15 marked in the palace. By the end of the week, 30. Riven met with each one individually. Learned their powers, learned their stories, started mapping out training protocols that would help them control their abilities without suppressing them completely. It was exhausting work, but it felt right. 2 weeks after accepting the advisor position, Riven stood in front of her first formal training session. 20 marked individuals, ranging from teenagers to middle-aged adults, all watching her nervously. I'm not going to lie to you, she began. This won't be easy. Learning control takes time, takes effort. You'll fail sometimes. Maybe hurt someone. Maybe hurt yourself. She let her fire flare, silver flames dancing across her palms. But failure doesn't make you a monster. It makes you human. What matters is what you do after, whether you give up or keep trying. She demonstrated basic techniques: meditation to calm the power, visualization to direct it, partner exercises where they learn to sense each other's energy and provide support. Kale observed from the side, occasionally stepping in when someone's power surged dangerously. His presence was steadying, strong enough to contain incidents but not threatening. By the end of the first week, 3 students could consistently activate their powers on command. By the end of the month, half the class had achieved basic control. Progress. Real, measurable progress. But not everyone was happy about it. Resistance came from expected quarters, old families who saw the marked as threats, merchants who worried about property damage, citizens who couldn't shake their fear. It also came from unexpected ones. "They're moving too fast," Thorne said during a council meeting, "giving them too much freedom before they're ready." "They're people, not weapons," Riven replied. "They deserve freedom while they're learning, not after they've proven themselves safe. And when one of them loses control in a crowded market, when someone dies, then we handle it, investigate, take responsibility. But we don't lock them all up preemptively because of what might happen." The debate raged for hours. In the end, Kale sided with Riven, and the training continued. But it was a reminder that changing minds was slower than changing laws. 3 months into her new role, Riven received word that her brother was alive. She'd given up hoping years ago, assumed he'd moved on, started a new life, forgotten about the sister who'd been exiled. But Mira's networks had found him, living in a remote territory under a false name, still looking for her. Riven traveled there with Kale, both of them moving quietly to avoid attention. They found him in a small village, working as a blacksmith. He looked older, tired, but when he saw Riven, his face transformed. River. Her childhood nickname. No one had called her that in years. They stood facing each other across the smithy yard. "I looked for you," he said. His voice cracked. "After the exile. I searched for months. Couldn't find any trace." "I didn't want to be found," Riven replied. "Thought it was safer that way." "Safer for who?" "Everyone." Her brother, Cade, she remembered. Cade, with the gentle hands and the stubborn loyalty, crossed the distance between them and pulled her into a hug. Riven's fire flared instinctively. She pulled back, afraid of burning him. "I'm not afraid of your fire," Cade said quietly. "Never was." Slowly, carefully, Riven let herself be hugged, let herself feel safe enough to accept comfort. When they finally separated, Kale had tactfully moved to inspect some nearby metalwork. "Who's he?" Cade asked. "Kale Draven, the Alpha King." Cade's eyebrows rose. "You're traveling with the Alpha King now?" "I'm working with him. It's complicated." "I bet." Cade studied her face. "You look different, stronger maybe, or just more tired." "Both." Riven managed a smile. "It's been a rough few months." They talked for hours. Cade explained how he'd been voted down when he tried to defend her but hadn't accepted the exile. How he'd left the pack, searching for her. How he'd eventually settled here when the search seemed hopeless. Riven told him about the wilderness, about saving Kale, about the conspiracy and the plague, and the battle at the temple. "You saved the capital," Cade said, wonder in his voice. "The exiled girl they said was cursed saved the entire northern territories. I had help." "Still?" Cade shook his head. "I always knew you were meant for more than what they tried to make you." "Come back with me," Riven said suddenly. "To the capital. I'm establishing a training center for the marked. We could use a smith, someone who understands working with unstable materials." Cade looked around his small smithy, his small life. "I don't know. This is safe. Quiet." "So is exile," Riven replied. "Safe and quiet and soul-crushing. You don't belong in hiding any more than I do." He thought about it, then nodded. "Okay. Yeah. Let's do something that matters." They left the next morning, Cade joining them on the journey back. The training center was completed 6 months after Riven had accepted the advisor position. a sprawling complex on the edge of the capital with dormitories, training grounds, workshops, and medical facilities. It wasn't a prison, wasn't a cage. It was a school. The opening ceremony drew crowds, supporters and protesters alike, all wanting to witness this historic moment. Riven stood at the podium, acutely aware of every eye on her. She'd prepared a speech. Formal words about unity and progress in the future. She threw them away. "I was 14 when my pack exiled me," she said instead. "Threw me out because my power scared them. Told me I was cursed, dangerous, better off dead." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. For years I believed them, believed I was broken, that my power was a mistake, something to hide and suppress and fear. She let her fire blaze, bright silver flames that danced but didn't burn. "But my power isn't a curse. It's part of who I am, and I'm not broken. I'm different." She gestured to the center behind her. "This place exists because being different isn't the same as being dangerous, because people deserve a chance to learn, to grow, to become more than what fear says they should be." She looked directly at the protesters holding their signs. "You're scared. I get it. Change is terrifying. Power you don't understand is threatening, but fear has driven enough decisions, cost enough lives. It's time to try something else." She turned to the marked students waiting behind her. Time to try trust, education, community. Time to prove that given the chance, people will choose to be better than what fear expects. The crowd was silent. Then, slowly, applause started. Not universal, never that, but enough. Cale joined her at the podium. "The Northern Territories formally recognize this training center and its students. We commit to providing resources, protection, and support as they learn to integrate their abilities into our society." He looked at Riven. "And we commit to doing better than we did before, to seeing the marked not as threats, but as citizens with rights and potential." More applause. The ceremony concluded with the ceremonial lighting of the center's eternal flame, silver fire that Riven created and would maintain, a symbol of hope and transformation. As the crowd dispersed, Varen approached. "I still have reservations," he said, "but I can't deny what you've accomplished. Perhaps I was wrong about you." "Perhaps?" Riven raised an eyebrow. Varen's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Definitely. I was definitely wrong." He left. Riven watched him go, feeling something settle in her chest. Not forgiveness, he didn't deserve that yet, but acknowledgement, progress. It would have to be enough. That night, Riven stood on the training center's highest tower, watching the city lights spread below. The capital looked different now, less hostile, more like a place she could actually belong. Cale found her there, as she'd known he would. "Long day," he said. "Worth it, though." "Yeah." He stood beside her, both of them looking out at their city. "I've been thinking about the future, about what comes next. And I want to expand this. Not just one center in the capital, but schools in every territory. Safe places for the marked to learn and grow." "That'll take years," Riven said. "Decades, maybe." "Good thing we've got time, then." Riven looked at him, really looked, saw the lines of exhaustion around his eyes, the silver scars from old battles, the determination that had kept him alive through betrayal and poison and war. "You really think we can do this?" she asked. "Change an entire system?" "I think we're already doing it." Cale's hand found hers, one person at a time. One mind changed. One exile welcomed home. "That's optimistic for you. You're rubbing off on me." They stood in comfortable silence, watching their city breathe. Riven's fire was quiet now, content, no longer the desperate, wild thing it had been in exile. It had learned what she had, that power controlled was stronger than power unleashed, that trust was harder but more valuable than fear, that belonging meant accepting imperfection in yourself and others. "I have a proposal," Cale said finally. "What kind of proposal?" "The formal kind." He turned to face her fully. "The council's been pushing for me to take a mate, strengthen alliances, produce heirs, all that political nonsense." Riven's stomach clenched. "Congratulations. Who's the lucky noble?" "You." If you'll have me. Riven stared. What? I'm asking you to be my queen, my equal, my partner in everything, not just the marked initiatives. Kale's expression was serious. It's not romantic. It's not about love or passion. It's about building something that lasts, about having someone I trust beside me when the next crisis hits. That's possibly the least romantic proposal in history. I know, but it's honest. He squeezed her hand. I'm not offering you poetry or romance. I'm offering you partnership, power, the chance to reshape the territories into something better. And yeah, political nightmares and constant scrutiny, and people who will hate you for existing. Riven's mind raced. Queen. The word felt impossible. She'd been in exile 6 months ago. Now she was being offered a crown. Why me? She asked. You could have anyone. Someone with connections, political leverage, someone who'd make your life easier. Because I don't want easier. I want better. Kale's eyes were intense. And you make me better. Make me think harder. Question more. Care about people I'd have dismissed before. I don't love you, Riven said bluntly. I know. I don't love you either. Kale's mouth quirked. But I respect you, trust you, believe in what we're building together. That's stronger than love. Love fades. Partnership endures. Riven thought about it. Thought about the girl she'd been. Alone, afraid, convinced she was cursed. Thought about who she'd become. Teacher, advisor, the person other marked looked to for guidance. Thought about what she could become with this kind of power. Okay, she said, I'll marry you, but on one condition. Which is? We rewrite the laws around royal succession, make it so power is earned, not inherited, so no child of ours is forced into leadership they don't want. Deal. Kale pulled her close. Not a kiss. Neither of them was ready for that. Just a fierce hug between partners who'd fought through hell together. We'll announce it tomorrow. Give the council something new to argue about. They'll lose their minds. Probably. Should be entertaining. Riven laughed, genuine and free. We're going to destroy so many traditions. Good. They needed destroying anyway. They announced the engagement the next morning. As predicted, the council lost their minds. Half celebrated the political stability. Half protested the impropriety. Varen looked like he'd swallowed something sour, but didn't object. The public reaction was mixed. Some people saw it as romantic, the exiled girl becoming queen. Others saw it as dangerous, too much power concentrated in too few hands. Riven didn't care what they thought. She'd spent too long living by other people's expectations, running from their fear, trying to make herself smaller, safer, less threatening. She was done with that. The wedding was simple. No grand ceremony or political spectacle. Just vows exchanged in front of witnesses, binding them as partners in governance and life. Riven wore silver and black, her fire made manifest in silk. Kale wore traditional alpha regalia. They spoke vows they'd written themselves, promising partnership, honesty, and the courage to keep fighting for what mattered. When it was done, they were king and queen, alpha and flamekeeper, equal. The reception was larger, open to the public. People came from across the territories, nobles and merchants and common folk, all curious about this unprecedented union. Riven saw her brother in the crowd, grinning, saw Mira raising a glass in salute, saw Thorn and Kira speaking quietly in a corner, already planning the next phase of reforms. She saw the marked students from the training center, watching with hope and pride. And she saw the protesters outside, still holding their signs, still convinced this was a mistake. All of it. The support and the resistance. The hope and the fear. The progress and the pushback. All of it was real. Change wasn't clean, wasn't simple, wasn't a straight line from broken to fixed. But it was possible. And that was enough. Kale found her on the balcony later, escaping the noise. Tired of being queen already? He asked. Tired of people staring. Riven leaned against the railing. How do you deal with it? The constant scrutiny? Badly, most days. Kale joined her. But it gets easier. You learn to ignore the noise, focus on what matters. And what matters? This. He gestured to the city. The students learning control, the families reuniting, The marked coming home. That's what we're fighting for. Not approval, not popularity, just the chance to build something better. Riven's fire flickered warm around her fingers. Think we'll succeed? I think we'll try. That's all anyone can do. They stood together, watching the city lights spread like stars. Riven thought about the journey that had brought her here. From exile to advisor to queen, from cursed to essential, from alone to partnered. It hadn't been smooth, hadn't been easy, had cost her blood and pain and nights when she wasn't sure she'd survive until morning. But she had survived, had done more than survive. She'd transformed. The wilderness that should have killed her had made her stronger. The power that should have destroyed her had become her greatest asset. The exile that should have broken her had led her exactly where she needed to be. Thank you, she said quietly. Kale looked at her. For what? For seeing me. Not what I could do for you, not the power, just me. Thank you for letting me. Kale's hand found hers. For trusting me when you had every reason not to. They stood like that as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of silver and gold. Below them, the city moved and breathed. The training center's eternal flame burned bright. The marked students were safe. The corruption was gone. There would be more challenges, more resistance, more nights of fighting and bleeding and wondering if any of it mattered. But Riven was ready. She'd been forged in fire and ice, in exile and battle, in fear, and finally in hope. She was the Flamekeeper, the queen who'd been an outcast, the weapon who'd chosen healing, the cursed girl who'd become essential. And she was just getting started. The northern territories were changing, would continue changing, would become something new, something that had room for people like her, for power that didn't fit neat categories, for strength that came from partnership instead of domination. It wouldn't be perfect, nothing ever was, but it would be better. And better was worth fighting for. Riven's fire blazed bright, not wild, not desperate, but purposeful and controlled and absolutely, finally, hers. She wasn't running anymore, she was building, and nothing, not fear, not tradition, not the ghosts of her exile, would stop her. The future stretched uncertain and dangerous and full of impossible possibility. Riven smiled. She'd always preferred impossible anyway.